Good morning, everybody, and happy Sukkot, a good moed. Yes, it's been one of those mornings. It's 8:42. We usually do our program at 8:30, but we're here. It's Yantif, and on Yantif we talk about joy, we experience joy, we draw joy, and we want to be inspired because every day of the holiday has another message, has another theme, and there's so much to draw from this great festival that I'm so excited to share with you. As I mentioned yesterday, today's theme will be the lulav and the estrog. Yesterday we discussed the name of Sukkot, the mitzvah of Sukkah. There's another mitzvah on Sukkot, which is the lulav and the etrog. Right? Let me go back a little. So you see the long branch. This is a palm branch that is surrounded by different plants. This is a myrtle branch, and this is a willow branch hidden here amongst all of them. Yes, it's there, my friends, right there. Whoops, let me bring it out to you. It's a slightly different type of leaf. See, it's like a longer type of leaf. The willow branch is a shorter type of leaf. And these are three plants that are tied together and brought together with a fourth plant, which is really a fruit. It's called the etrog. And on Sukkot, we bring it, we bless it, and we incorporate it into the prayers and to the festivities. What's behind this strange arrangement? And I'm sure you've heard from us many times, many different ideas, that these four different plants represent four different types of people. According to a different midrash, it represents four different parts of our body: the eyes, mouth, heart, and spine. And we bring it together. That's kind of the bottom line, that whatever is differentiated by external appearances, on Sukkot, we bring these things together to indicate that whether you are a rava plant, whether you are this part of your body, or the heart, which is symbolized by the beautiful etrog, on Sukkot we find a common thread, a common denominator, or maybe not denominator, maybe it's the higher commonality that really defies the different purposes. But I want to speak about the estrog, because we bring these together. Now, we are taught that the difference between these four is the difference between the calibration between taste and smell. See, the palm branch is from a date tree. Dates have a beautiful taste. They don't have smell. The myrtle branch has a beautiful smell, but there's no fruit, has no taste. And the willow branch, if we find him again, has no taste and no smell, just very basic, right? So the plants that we have here, let me get that for you again, right over here, right? So the plants that we have is a calibration. One has a beautiful taste, beautiful smell, and one has nothing. And then separate from that is the etrog. The etrog is this beautiful, gorgeous fruit, beautiful smell. There's a taste, there's a fruit inside of this peel. And this, on Yom Tov, we bring from the taste and the fruit and the tasteless and without any odor, without any smell, and we bring it together. What do taste and smell represent? Taste is the study of Torah, is knowledge. When you eat something, you absorb it, you bring it into yourself, and you satiate yourself, you bring yourself energy. So it is with the knowledge and the study of Torah. It's not just studying stories or ideas, it's to internalize the ideas and energize your soul, bring your soul the energy that it needs. That's taste. Smell, on the other hand, are our actions. Actions are external. So is smell. Smell is an odor that you give off, a fragrance that you give off, and others incorporate that. And that's our actions. Actions are things that we do, and we impact others so that their lives can be better. And some people are scholars. Some people do better studying, absorbing information. Other people are doers. Other people do things, do good things. They may not be able to master the knowledge of Judaism, but they practice, they observe, they help other people. Some people are just nothing. They're just out to lunch. They have no connection, not intellectually, not emotionally, not through action. And then you have the etrog. The etrog is the perfect balance, the tzaddik, the person who absorbs the knowledge, studies the Torah, is intellectually in tune, but also gives off to someone else through the actions that they do. And on Yom Tov, we say This is the ideal. And whatever your deficiency is, you can reach that ideal. Because if you're not wired, so to speak, to be a doer, but there's always things you can do. If you're not wired to be a student, there's always things you can study. It's impossible for a person to say, well, I am this way or I'm that way. We all need to be the etrog. We all need to bring all our deficiencies together because this is the ideal that we can reach. And I want to speak for just a few moments about this etrog, because this etrog, as beautiful as it is, as well balanced as it is, does have a tendency to sometimes be separate from the rest of the people, either because these people feel disconnected, because I can't reach. Who am I to speak to the Rebbe, right? Who am I to reach the level of a great man? I'm a simple, ordinary person. We all have our qualities. It's not about, but we all know our deficiencies, and we know we're not perfect. So we kind of think of perfection as something distant from us. And this is the message, that as imperfect as you are, you should always strive for perfection. Not because you will become perfect necessarily, but because when you strive for perfection, when you strive to be better than you know you're capable, you will be better. As there's a saying, life is what happens when you're trying to figure it out. If you satisfy yourself with the status quo, this is who I am, this is the best I can be, I'm imperfect, guess what? You will remain in that level of imperfection. But even if you shoot, like they say, you shoot for the stars, you'll hit the moon. If you shoot for the tree, you'll hit the floor. You got to always strive to be better than you think you can be, because you will become better than you can be, although maybe not to that level of perfection. So that's one very beautiful message when we bring the lulav and etrog together. It's a message for us that are in this category. But there's even a deeper message that I think we can all learn. It's not just about the lulav and etrog coming together to the etrog, but it's for the etrog always knowing that as complete as it is in its own perfection, it is truly incomplete if it cannot feel a connection to those that are less perfect than itself. And this becomes a very important message in our spiritual life, because many times when we know what we are good at, and when we strive for perfection and we become more spiritual, we may have a tendency to become judgmental about those that are less spiritual as yourself or less accomplished as yourself. Well, if they would just work harder, they can also achieve that. So then why should I even bother with those people? And this is what the holiday of Sukkot is saying. There's no such thing as those people. People that have less than you should never be judged as being less adequate than yourself. Perhaps they have less than you, so you can connect with them and lift them up. As beautiful as the etrog is, it is incomplete without the others. There's a beautiful story that I heard, and this is what I'll share with you today, about the etrog, a literal story, but a story that has so much meaning. It's a story that involves the great Hasidic masters in the 18th century, lived in the 1700s, Reb Elimelech of Lizhensk. Reb Elimelech of Lizhensk was a very, very spiritual person, a very holy person. And when he would engage in prayer, it was very evident that he wasn't just mumbling words, but he was engaged in great spiritual activity. And he was in tune with the spiritual energy of that day. So can you imagine this great spiritual Hasidic master, Reb Elimelech of Lizhensk, when he was celebrating Sukkot, the festival of joy? He was so joyous during his prayer. And the prayer that is unique for Sukkot or any holiday is the Hallel prayer. And the Hallel prayer, there's such joyful singing. And Reb Elimelech was so engaged in the spiritual joy that was so obvious on him that he was in a joyful state. And during the Hallel prayer, we actually use the lulav and etrog, bringing it together. And Reb Elimelech is using the lulav, shaking the lulav, and all of a sudden, he stops. And they realize something is going on because he was so joyful. And here he became so serious. And he starts to whiff. And then he resumes with even greater joy and completes his prayer. Now, that was a very unusual interruption for Rebbe Elimelech, who was always so focused at the moment. What was he withing? What was he looking for? So after the prayer, he rushes to his brother Reb Zusha, who was another great Hasidic master who spent the holiday with him, and who was standing. He says, "Come." Rebbe Elimelech was telling his brother, "Come, I need to find that esrog in this shul that had the smell, that had that energy of the Garden of Eden, the garden that God created, the beginning of creation. Someone in this synagogue has a very special esrog, and I need to find out where that's from." Because while I was doing my prayer, there was this unbelievable, overwhelming, beautiful fragrance that was floating in this synagogue. And they go from person to person. They knew the people in the synagogue. Nobody, Rebbe Elimelech, this isn't it. In the corner, there was a fellow sitting. And Rebbe Elimelech goes to this fellow and said, this is the esrog. This is the esrog from the Garden of Eden, from God's garden himself. He turns to this individual and he says, "Please tell me, where did you get this beautiful esrog?" The fellow looks at Rebbe Elimelech, a beautiful esrog. He barely had a esrog which was half this size. It was all shriveled. It was far from a beautiful esrog, what people would ordinarily refer to as a beautiful esrog. And he's almost embarrassed. Nobody even knew who he was. He was sitting in the corner, embarrassed with this shriveled esrog. Elimelech says, "No, this is a very special esrog. There's a story behind this esrog. Please tell me that story." And the fellow began to look. He says, "My name is Uri, and I come from the city of Strelisk, another Polish city. And I don't have much money. I'm a very poor person. I'm a malamed, I'm a teacher, and I barely make enough to support my family. But what is always important for me is to purchase a beautiful esrog for Sukkot. In fact, I always put away half of my income to be able to buy an esrog when I have that extra little bit of income. In fact, my wife is so supportive of this great mitzvah that she even works, that we can support the family, and I can have that little extra money to buy a beautiful esrog to beautify my holiday. And every day I put away a little bit till I'm able to get the amount of money to go to Lemberg, which was a big city then, where they were able to buy Judaica, and I can take my 50 golden, which is what an esrog, a beautiful esrog costs, to be able to buy that esrog. In fact, I'm so poor that I walk by foot to Lemberg, which is a long walk, just so I can every year get that beautiful esrog. This year was no different. My wife and I saved up the money, and I take my 50 gulden, and I'm walking to Lemberg to buy my esrog. On the way, I was a little tired, and I figured, let me stop at the inn to daven my mincha prayer, and then rest up a little bit, and then I'd go further. And as I'm in the middle of my prayer, Reb Uri is saying, this fellow with the esrog, I hear a very painful cry coming from next door. And I finish my prayer, I right away go over to this individual, and I ask him, "Why are you crying? What's going on?" He says, "Why I'm crying? I am a wagon driver." Something with those wagon drivers. "I'm a wagon driver, and this is where I make my living. And I was just riding my wagon to a customer, and my horse just collapsed. And I have nowhere to get a horse. I have no money to get a horse. I have nowhere to turn. I'm turning to God to pray. That's what my cries were for." And he's listening to the story, Reb Uri, the fellow that owns the esrog. And the innkeeper's in the other room. He hears the other story. And he says, "Listen, I have a horse for you. I can sell you another horse. But that horse is really worth 80 gulden. But I'll give it to you for 50 gulden." He tells his wagon driver, "It's a good horse. It's a healthy horse. If you can just put together the money, I'll give you the horse and you could go on your way. The wagon driver said, where am I going to get money? I don't have a penny to my name. I was going out to go pick up a customer to make some money. I don't have money, 50 gulden to make a horse. Meantime, Uri, who has his 50 gulden to go buy his esrog, is having this internal war. I have 50 gulden, but if I give him the 50 gulden, then I can't buy an esrog. So he comes up with a compromise. He tells the innkeeper, what is the absolute minimum that you will sell a horse to this individual? And the innkeeper says, the best price I can give is 45 gulden. Without blinking an eye, Uri says, okay. Because in his mind, he says, I'll give him the 45 gulden. At least I'll have 5. I'll get an esrog that is for 5 gulden. Now, you can imagine an esrog for 5 gulden isn't what you get for 50 gulden, but he's going to help and save this Jew. And he buys the horse for this Jew, and he's on his way to Lemberg. And he tells Reb Elimelech of Lizhensk, what can I buy with 5 gulden? Look at my esrog. This is what I got for 5 gulden, small, shriveled. I was so embarrassed, he says, Reb Uri, to go home that I stayed here in Lizhensk so that nobody will know me. And I'm sitting in the corner so nobody will see what kind of pitiful esrog you have. Reb Elimelech turns to him and says, what? A pitiful esrog? The love and the commitment that you made for this other Jew makes this the most beautiful esrog. It is the esrog from the Garden of Eden itself. And he begins to tell him a whole nother story, which I won't share now, how this act of kindness averted a great decree that was supposed to come to the Jewish people, which is a story for a different time. But this is a story of an esrog, where a person does not get too carried away in their own spiritual pursuit to leave behind someone who's desperately in need. You see, many times when we get engaged in our personal spirituality, it's about ourselves, and we've discussed this many times in the past. Jewish spirituality can never take you away from someone else. The more Jewish you become spiritually, the closer you become to someone else. Because the more you realize you're a soul, you realize that another person has a soul, and all the souls are interconnected. And that becomes the message of the etrog, coming to the lulav and realizing that as complete as this is, it is incomplete if it cannot connect with those that are less fortunate. The etrog that Reb Elimelech smelled in the middle of his great spiritual prayer was an etrog that was beyond 50 gulden. It was an etrog you couldn't buy. It was an etrog from God's own garden, because that etrog expressed a deeper spiritual truth, that we're all interconnected. And I want to conclude with a very short story on the same theme of the previous Rebbe. It's a custom in Hasidic synagogues that the Rebbe makes the blessing on their lulav and etrog, and then he gives it to his community that people can share in the mitzvah and use the Rebbe's lulav and etrog. So the previous Rebbe said that he gave it out to Chassidim, like every Hasidic Rebbe, and then so many people used it that I don't know if you see, but the beautiful yellow of an etrog started to turn brown from all the oils of the people handling it, hundreds and thousands of people handling a fruit. The yellow started to become tarnished, started to become a little brown. It wasn't so beautiful. And someone expressed to the Rebbe, when you give it to so many people, unfortunately, your esrog becomes less beautiful. To which the previous Rebbe answered, the brown marks of thousands of other Jews using my esrog doesn't make it less beautiful. It makes it more beautiful. Because that's what the previous Rebbe said. And my explanation is because the whole idea of the etrog is to connect you to more people, not to make you disconnected from the lulav and the esrog and all the people that have less than you. And this becomes then the important message. And I encourage you, as I encouraged you yesterday, to give me a call if you need to come to a sukkah. Give me a call if you want us to come bring the lulav and etrog to you, so you can make the blessing and learn from its beautiful message. I hope to hear from you soon. I hope you enjoyed these beautiful stories. and the beautiful messages of this holiday. I want to wish you a good Moed, and I'll see you tomorrow morning at 8:30 again, I hope, in a timely way. And we'll learn about a whole different mitzvah of Sukkot, the mitzvah of joy, the mitzvah of happiness. Have a meaningful day and connect with someone who has less than you. Bye-bye.